Adams, in Jesus' name, chapter 29. It is still December 23rd. It is 9 p.m. Monday night. Reverend Ronald Clark home, Huntington Beach, California. Ronnie folded his napkin and dabbed at his eyes. Earlier today, the children and grandchildren of Donna, his deceased sister, arrived. They included Andrew, his wife, Nicole, and their two children, Harrison and Camille. Andrew was Jesse's cousin, and apparently the two families of Ronnie's two sisters were very close, which was a happy thing. Andrew's children, Harrison, age 28, Camille, age 24, and Jesse's son, Patrick, age 27, were also apparently very musical. What they hadn't known was Ronnie's own great-grandchildren, Linda's grandchildren, Carson and Sydney, also loved to sing. The five of them had just finished singing the beautiful song by Hillside Worship's What a Beautiful Name. 11-year-old Sydney had stolen the show, and the entire thing was one of the most beautiful things Ronnie had ever heard. "Uncle Ronnie, are you crying?" Patrick asked. Ronnie laughed and nodded. "I'm sorry, but that was absolutely amazing. This must be how it seemed that night when the shepherds heard the angels sing." Sydney giggled. Ronnie sniffed. "This gift, this thing, the Adams finding my family and bringing you here, this is the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me, other than the angel, when I was a boy. And the fact that you all would even come after all this time, my heart is so full." Andrew's wife, Nicole, whom they called Nikki, rose and went to put her arms around Ronnie where he sat. "Oh, Uncle Ronnie, our hearts are full too. You don't know how many times we've spoken about you. Andy talked about you all the time, even though he'd never met you. We honestly thought you had passed. We even looked for your obituary." She kissed him on the cheek. "Of course we came. There was no question. There was never any question." Ronnie patted Nikki's arm. "Well, thank you so much, young lady," he said, obviously a little flustered, being hugged by the woman. Jesse's wife, Becky, laughed. "Uncle Ronnie, don't be too embarrassed by Nikki hugging and kissing you. She's like that, very demonstrative." "Oh, I'm just very outgoing," Nikki said. Andrew nodded. "And it's a good thing, too, because I'm a little on the quiet side. We balance each other out." Ronnie smiled. His heart felt like it might burst. It was almost like a Christmas his own Connie would plan. All the beautiful decorations, tons of gifts under the tree, music, candles, lots of goodies, laughter and love. It was a true miracle. "Dad," Linda said softly, "I imagine you're not used to being up this late." He nodded. "No, I'm usually in bed by now, but I'm okay." "Well, I'm actually pretty tired myself," Linda said. Ronnie nodded. He and his long-lost daughter had been awake before the sun came up and had a long conversation before anyone else woke. The conversation had been filled with tears and apologies and regrets. And then they'd prayed together, and it was like they'd been walking on air the rest of the day. "Yes, actually, we're tired too," Andrew said suddenly. "I suppose we should call it a night. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and I have a little shopping I have to do, and Uncle Ronnie said he has rounds to make to members of his congregation. It's a big day." Everyone began to stand and take dishes and cups into the kitchen and make sure all the food was put away and counters wiped down clean. They gathered at the foot of the stairs. It was going to be a tight squeeze. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms. One was Ronnie's. One was given to Jesse and Becky. One was given to Andy and Nikki, and one was occupied by Ronnie's daughter, Linda, and her granddaughter, Sydney. Downstairs, back in the den, there were 3 blow-up mattresses that would sleep Harrison, Patrick, and Carson. And in Ronnie's office was another blow-up mattress where 24-year-old Camille would bed down. Ronnie looked them over with a smile. I'm sorry we're a little cramped." "It's okay, Uncle Ronnie," Jessie said. "It's kind of fun, like camping out." Camille nodded. "I'm not a bit bothered. I'm just so happy we can all be together." "Me too," Andy said. "Uncle Ronnie, you know, we were offered rooms at Grandmaster Kino's home or at a hotel, but we wanted to stay here with you, like a real family." Patrick smiled. "I love it. How awesome is this?" Ronnie glanced down at 15-year-old Carson. What about you, young man? Carson smiled. It's cool. I'm good. Ronnie nodded. My heart is overflowing. Let's have a family prayer before we all say goodnight. Let's do, Jessie said. Who should I call on? Ronnie asked playfully, because I prayed at dinner. Everyone pointed to Patrick. Patrick chuckled. I guess it's me. Hold hands, Harrison said quietly. They stood in a circle, hand in hand, feeling the connection of a family Ronnie never knew existed. He hadn't felt the love of a family since he was 10, until he married Connie, and then he lost his son and drove his daughter away and eventually lost his wife. He didn't even realize how much he craved this feeling, this connection. These people were his family. He smiled as he closed his eyes to pray, his heart filled with gratitude. New scene. Well, it is still December 23rd, 11 p.m. Monday night at Mark Adams' home, Newport, California. JoJo turned over quickly and grabbed up his phone when it buzzed. Hey, Aunt Jeffy, is everything okay? Yes, it is, JoJo. This is just a courtesy call. Oh, it's not very courteous to call when I'm already asleep. She laughed. Sorry, but I think you're going to want to hear what I have to say. He sat up. Okay, lay it on me. So, first, let me report to you that Kaylee's session with Dad went very well, according to Dad. He got through to her. She's going to change her ways and get her act together. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Jeffy smiled and went on. Second, she was touched by the honor and respect that our family shows to Dad, and it made her want to go home to see her parents and right some wrongs. And I felt what she was feeling, and her heart was filled with love and a longing to make things right. In other words, she was remorseful and repentant, and I spoke with her and encouraged her to go home and do exactly what she was thinking. Okay, JoJo said, wondering where this was leading. And so, Kaylee and Raylyn will be on an Ameritech jet at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, headed to Oklahoma. JoJo sat up. In the morning? Yes, I thought you would want to know. I would. I do. He sighed. It was the only time, JoJo, that these few days Ray had off of work. It was now or wait months to make it happen. I felt strongly that Kaylee needed to go now. She got very excited about going home to surprise her parents and do something nice for them for Christmas. And of course, she wouldn't want to go without Raylyn, and so they are leaving in the morning. JoJo was silent. JoJo, I know you're disappointed. I know you're interested in Ray. I get that. I know you had some plans to try to see her at Christmas, and I know you have a gift for her. But this was important for both of them. There's some closure. And Dad says for most of her life, Raylyn has been in service to Kaylee, and this trip may be the time when she is relieved of that duty and will feel free to pursue her own happiness. Okay. When you put it that way, I guess I need to stop being disappointed and support whatever is taking place. Jeffy smiled. Good job. That was a quick adjustment. JoJo grunted in response. I really don't have any choice, do I? So what time do they have to be at the airport? Excuse me, I still have a cold. Well, they're leaving from the AMT strip, and a car is picking them up at their house at 5. A car is picking them up at their house at 5, and they'll be leaving from the Ameritech strip. I've got that reversed. He sighed. I guess I need to set my alarm. Well, if you're intending to go see her before she leaves, you need to give her a heads up. I'm just saying, kiddo. She'll want to make sure she's decent. Got it. Thanks, Aunt Jeffy. What's the least I can do, since it's pretty much my fault and my idea for them to take this trip? Please don't be mad at me. He laughed. No, of course not. I know how connected you are. I know this must be important for them. When are they coming back? The day after Christmas. Ray has to be at work on Friday. Okay, I guess I can handle it for a few days. I'll just focus on whatever I can do for everyone else. Good man. Bye, sweetie. Good night, Aunt Jeffy. He ended the call and immediately called Raylyn. Hello? She said immediately. Hi, Raylyn, JoJo said softly. Hi, is everything okay? Yes, well, sort of. I just heard that you're leaving to go home for Christmas. Yes, it was a last-minute thing. How do you feel about it? Well, at first, I was not real gung-ho about it, but now I'm feeling kind of excited to see my parents and surprise them. It'll be good for them, and I think it's going to be good for Kay, too. Okay, good. Well, I had a gift for each of you, and since you won't be here for Christmas, I'd like to bring them by in the morning before you leave. Would that be okay? Well, sure, but you know we're leaving at 5 in the morning. Yes, I know. So, would it be okay for me to be there by 4:30? Well, sure, if that's what you want to do. I hate for you to have to get up so early. It doesn't bother me, and it'll be worth it to see you before you leave. Raylan smiled because those were sweet words. She thought JoJo Adams, the USC quarterback whom she admired from afar for years, had just been being nice. He was known for how kind he is, how nice he is, how Christian he is. His teammates call him preacher, and indeed he was now giving sermons at a church. But she was getting the idea that maybe, just maybe, he was slightly interested in her. Could that be? She shook her head. Probably not. If anything, he was in all likelihood interested in Cali. She nodded. More than likely, that's exactly what was going on. Hello? Oh, sorry. I was just thinking. So, yes, of course, you're welcome to come by in the morning. He smiled. Good. Well, then, I'll see you in the morning. Good night. Good night, she said sweetly and hung up. She felt strange. What was the feeling right now? She was a little excited to be able to see JoJo. Who wouldn't be? But she was also a little disappointed. Why? She sighed. Because he was probably interested in her sister. Everyone was. It usually didn't bother her. Her sister was beautiful, outgoing, bright, always the life of a party. But this time, she just realized she felt a little jealous, a little bit resentful. Why does Kaylee get everything? Especially when Kaylee has a way of taking and taking and taking, and then using and discarding everything. JoJo rescued Kaylee. He saved the princess from the dragon, so the next logical step is to fall in love with the princess, not with the princess's older nag of a sister. She reset her alarm for a little earlier so she would have time for JoJo's visit, turned over, and tried to sleep. New scene. It is finally December 24th, 5:30 a.m., Tuesday morning. Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Gabe woke when he felt a tiny hand on his face. He opened his eyes and smiled. What are you doing out of bed, little flower? Gabe, Iris said in an exaggerated whisper, it's Christmas Eve. He smiled. I know. He sat up and pulled her into bed with him. Lay down and let me sleep for a few more minutes. I don't want to sleep. I want to go outside and look up in the sky and see if we can see Jesus. He closed his eyes, drew a deep breath, and resigned himself to his fate. If he hadn't reminded her last night that last Christmas they'd done just that, gone outside and looked up and talked to Jesus, and Gabe had pretended that he could see Jesus, if he hadn't reminded her, he could sleep. But Iris, when she decided she wanted to do something, was as stubborn as a bull. Anyway, he knew this was one of those times that he would always remember. Okay, little flower, go get your purple blankie out of your room because it's cold outside. She turned and ran to her room. Gabe pulled on a sweatshirt and some shoes. She came running back to his room and handed him the little blanket. He wrapped it around her shoulders and lifted her into his arms. They moved quietly downstairs and headed out the front door because he didn't want to walk on the wet grass in the backyard. They walked out to the middle of the large driveway and sat down on the pavement. I can't see anything, Iris whispered. Well, you have to be very still and very quiet, Gabe advised. He laid back so he didn't have to crane his neck, and Iris laid down beside him, and he put his arm out for her to use as a pillow. There, all comfy? Uh-huh. So let's talk to Jesus, Gabe said. Hey, Jesus, so me and Iris just wanted to talk to you a minute. It's Christmas Eve, and we just wanted to tell you happy birthday, and we're so glad you were born. Thank you, Jesus, for teaching us about love and about being good and about how we can come back to all live together with you. We love you, Jesus. I love you too, Jesus, Iris whispered. Gabe smiled. Jesus, you make my heart feel so happy, she went on. Uh-huh, I will. Yes, so I will. Gabe turned to look at her, his eyes opened wide. Okay, Jesus, I will tell them. I love you too, Iris said. Is Jesus talking to you? Gabe asked. Yes, Iris said. She pointed up. He's right there. Gabe looked up into the sky. Where? Right there, she said, pointing directly above her. Gabe peered up in the dark sky. It was cloudy, and he couldn't really see anything. No stars, no moon. His eyes filled with tears. Please, Jesus. I know I'm not worthy, but please let me see you too, he whispered. The cloud he was looking at shimmered for just a second. Gabe blinked because it looked for just a second like the cloud shifted and seemed to form the face of Jesus. Gabe's heart sped up. Thank you, he whispered. Beside him, Iris giggled. I love you too, Jesus. Happy birthday. Bye. Gabe watched the cloud drift by. He sat up and wiped the tears from his eyes, and Iris sat up and climbed into his lap. I'm cold, she complained. He smiled and squeezed her tight. Thank you, Iris, for making me come out here and talk to Jesus. Can we do it again next time that it's Christmas Eve, she asked. Yes, it's a date, he said solemnly, and silently vowed that from now on, no matter where he is, no matter what he's doing, he would go outside with Iris early on Christmas Eve morning and talk to Jesus. New scene. It's still Christmas Eve, December 24th, 5:40 a.m. Tuesday morning. We're still in Pine Forest, Georgia. Keegan Tanner picked up his phone when it buzzed. Someone had opened the front door. He pulled up the camera and watched his son, carrying Iris, walk down the steps of the porch and out to the middle of the driveway. They sat down together and then lay down together, and Keegan smiled. Is everything okay? Lizzie whispered. Yes. Gabe and Iris have gone out on a little excursion. They left? No, they're lying in the driveway looking up at the sky. Lizzie smiled. Keegan put his phone down and rolled over. Come here, Elizabeth. She scooted closer and snuggled up under his chin. I love the way you say that. The way I say, come here? Uh-huh. That's what you said to me back when we were at my old house in Tyler Springs. I was on the couch in the den in the middle of the night, and I started crying about something, and you said, come here, Elizabeth. And it made my heart beat so fast. He chuckled. Come here, Elizabeth, he said louder. She giggled. Shh, you'll wake the babies. He pushed her onto her back and looked down at her beautiful face. That was over 19 years ago. I was totally smitten with my nurse. I was trying to figure out how I could stay with you, and now, here I am, almost 20 years later, and I think I might be the happiest man in the world. She smiled. I'm glad you're happy. So, all the responsibility of taking care of my 5 girls all these years, that hasn't worn you down? You know, I could be insulted by that question, but I know you're just trying to get me to say that I wouldn't change a thing. And I wouldn't. Those girls are mine. I love them with all my heart. And the 4 children we had together, I love them with all my heart. And I love you with all my heart. And the only thing I wish I could change is I wish I could slow things down. Our girls are already finding their mates. Our boy is too, Lizzie reminded him. Keegan nodded. And you know what? We are so blessed because so far I approve of every single one of their choices. Lizzie smiled. We've had some close calls, though. Keegan nodded. Yeah. Mike Moreland and Vi's professor. We just have to stay vigilant, stay in prayer over these kids, and trust God. Lizzie smiled. Oh, Keegan Tanner, I love you. I love you, too. They both turned as one of the babies started to wake. Well, I guess I better get up and feed these babies. You do that. I'm sure my mom and dad will be up soon, and we'll start on breakfast. Thank you, Lizzie said. She started to get up, but Keegan pulled her back to him. Hold on. Let's start this day out right. First, kiss me, and then let's pray. Lizzie smiled. Her man. Thank you, Jesus, for this man. New scene. It is December 24th, 4:30 a.m., Tuesday morning at the Quinn home, Los Angeles, California. JoJo knocked softly on the front door. Kaylee answered it. Hey, JoJo, come on in. I got to finish getting ready. Ray, JoJo is here. JoJo placed 2 gift bags on the table next to the sofa and turned to watch Raylyn walk into the room. His heart sped up. Her bright smile, her tan skin, her dimples, and that long, shiny black hair was down and silky, and he longed to touch it. Those beautiful green eyes. She wore jeans and a black sweater with Merry Christmas written in red sparkly letters. Instead of some fancy black boots, she wore simple athletic shoes that were white with red trim. She was holding a rectangular gift in her hand, and she set it down on the back of the sofa. Hi, JoJo, she said brightly. Hey, you look nice. Thanks. I want to be festive when I see my parents. Are you excited? Yes, actually. It's going to be awesome to see them. Well, I'm happy for you. Maybe you can video the surprise. I'd love to see it. Oh, that's a good idea. Well, I know you're probably in a hurry, so I wanted to give you your Christmas gift. Well, thank you so much, she said as he handed her a gift bag. Kaylee, come here. JoJo has a gift for you, she called. Kaylee came running in. Oh, presents. I love presents, she said with a laugh. I know you do, Raylyn said. Go ahead and open yours. She reached into her bag and pulled out a red satin box of Godiva's chocolates. Oh, chocolates. I love chocolate, she exclaimed. JoJo smiled. I'm glad you do. I wasn't sure what to get, but Mom says most girls love chocolate. Well, she's right, Kaylee said. Ray, I might try to eat them all on the plane, so you'll have to keep me from doing that. I might help you eat them, she said. Kaylee reached back into the gift bag and pulled out a square box tied with a gold cord. Oh, what could this be? She said with glee. She quickly pulled off the gold cord and opened the box. Oh, wow, this is beautiful, she said. Ray blinked at the pretty piece of jewelry JoJo had given Kaylee. It was a Native American beaded choker. The beads were black and blue and turquoise, divided by what looked like real silver. It had one charm hanging from the center that was turquoise trimmed in silver, and dangling from that was 2 silver feathers. JoJo, Raylyn whispered, that is beautiful. Kay, do you love it? Kaylee grinned. Oh, I love it so much. He gave a relieved sigh. He hadn't been too sure about it. He grinned. I got it to match her face, he said quickly. Kaylee laughed, her eyes twinkling. Black and blue. Got it. Very funny. She put the chocolates and necklace back in the bag and approached JoJo. Thank you so much, JoJo. Thank you for the gifts. I love them so much. And thank you for saving me. Really. I owe you so much. She put her arms around his neck and hugged him. He put his hands on her shoulders. You don't owe me anything except to get all healed and do something wonderful with your life. I will. I promise. She went up and kissed his cheek. I have to go finish packing. Thanks again, JoJo, she said as she grabbed the bag and ran to her room. JoJo turned his eyes on Raylyn and smiled. Your turn. She nodded and reached into her bag. She pulled out a rectangular box. Oh, wait, he said. Open that one last. He took it from her. She giggled. Okay. She reached back in and pulled out a colorful bag of shower steamers. Oh, these are nice, she said. He smiled. Well, you work so hard taking care of other people. These are supposed to help relieve stress and restore and energize. Well, I can sure use that, she said. She reached back into the bag and pulled out a box and read the front. Spa Relife Korean Skincare Wraps. Well, that sounds interesting. Do I detect a theme? He smiled. Well, again, you work so hard. It's for you to pamper yourself for a change. She smiled. I don't really do that very much. I know. He handed her the gift he'd taken from her earlier. Okay, so I hope you like this. He drew a deep breath. She unwrapped the small box and looked at it, her brow furrowing as she read the words on the box. Wanna get some coffee. 35 date night scratch-offs. She blinked up at him. His heart felt like it might jump out of his chest. So, he began, I was wondering if you would allow me to take you on a few of those dates. Me? His brow furrowed. Who else? You want to take me out on a date? I do. Yes, I do. Is that too forward of me? I mean, you can think about it and let me know later. No, it's not too forward. It's just so I thought, I mean, go on. What did you think? I thought you were interested in Kaylee. What? She shrugged. You seem like you're very focused on Kaylee. Well, I was. I was focused on helping her. She seems like a great kid. But it's you, Raylin. You I'm interested in. So when you get back here, will you let me take you out? She blinked up at him and smiled. Yes, I'd love that. He blew out a breath and grinned. Okay, well, good. Well, so, have a safe trip. Oh, and maybe I can call you? I mean, just to see how your trip is going? She nodded. Yes, you can call me. I'd like that. He smiled. Okay, good. Okay, well, I'll let you finish getting ready. He glanced at his phone to check the time. The car should be here any minute. Oh, wait, she said as she lifted up the gift that she carried in earlier. I almost forgot. I got this for you. Really? You got me a present? Cool. He took the rectangular-shaped gift from her hand. It was wrapped in white paper and tied with a red ribbon. He pulled off the ribbon and tore open the paper. Oh, Raylin, this is awesome. She smiled. You said the other day that you were coming up with all kinds of ideas for talks and sermons, and I thought this would be perfect for you to keep with you and jot them down. He looked over the small journal notebook, handsomely enclosed in embossed leather, with a leather buckle to keep it closed. He opened it and was surprised to see writing on the first page. To Joseph Adams from Raylin Quinn. Looking forward to hearing every sermon you write in this book. May God bless and keep you. Merry Christmas. Love, Ray. His eyes shifted from the book to her big green eyes. Ray, thank you. Thank you so much. He closed the book and moved forward and hugged her. He pulled back and looked into her eyes. They were interrupted by Ray's phone buzzing. She pulled it up and looked at the phone. Oh, the car is here. He nodded. Let me help you get out to the car. They finished throwing a few more things together. JoJo and the Ameritech driver, who was also an agent, helped load everything into the SUV. JoJo hugged both Kaylee and Raylin, wished them both a Merry Christmas, and waved as the car pulled away. He smiled. They'd be back in a few days, and he'd intended to start on those date scratch-offs immediately. New scene. It is still December 24th, Tuesday morning, South Kino Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Young Eric left his room, crossed the hall, and knocked softly on Jordan's door. Jordan opened the door and smiled. Hey, 3, she said softly. Good morning, 2-3, he said softly. You ready to pray? Yes. She backed up and Eric came in the room. Quietly they knelt on the floor beside the bed, facing each other. He took her hands in his. Whose turn is it? He asked with a twinkle in his eye. I'm not ready yet. He nodded. Okay. He bowed his head, closed his eyes, and prayed. He prayed over their day. He prayed that things would go smoothly. He prayed for the well-being of his family and friends. He asked if God had anyone they needed to help to place them in his path today, and then to give him and Jordan the energy and the wisdom to take care of business. He gave thanks for their many blessings, and he did it all in Jesus' name. Amen, Jordan whispered. She looked up into the handsome face of the guy she loved. He smiled at her, and it made her heart beat faster. Leaning forward, he took her face in his hands and kissed her so gently, so reverently, that it almost brought tears to her eyes. So, he began, your mama's already downstairs helping my mom cook breakfast. I already told my dad we had some errands to run, and he asked me to pick up a load from a church down the street to take to a shelter in L.A. So we have to do that first. And then we have to hit the grocery store and then the grill for the 200 steak dinners. We'll go give those out, and while we're in that area, we'll get Josie's gift. How does that sound? That sounds great. It's always fun running around doing errands with you, and I always have fun watching people do double takes when they recognize who you are. He sighed. Well, I try not to notice. If you try not to notice, you might miss someone God is trying to place in your path. He smiled thoughtfully and nodded. You are so right, babe. Okay, I'm going to make eye contact with everyone we see today. Jordan giggled. Oh, this should be fun. He pulled her to her feet, and they headed downstairs. They were met by a beautiful girl holding a phone in their faces. And here they are, Gabe, the soon-to-be Mr. and Mrs. Eric Kino III. Jordan waved at Gabe. Hey, Gabe. Hey, Jordan. Hey, Eric. Gabe, how's it going? Young Eric said brightly. It's awesome, man. I just told Taylor about what happened this morning with Iris. Get her to tell you about it. Cool, I will. Hey, if I don't see you again today, Merry Christmas to you and your whole giant family. Back at you, bro. Taylor turned away and went to interview her father, who was busy talking to Amari and Brittany about the birth of Jesus. Mom, Jordan said, good morning, and something smells so good. Joel smiled. You're probably smelling the coffee cake in the oven, and Bree is working on some home fries. I'm going to make some pepper gravy for them, and we'll have some scrambled cheese eggs with peppers and onions. Wow, Eric said. Can't wait. What can we do to help? They were put to work immediately, cutting up fruit. New scene. December 24th, Tuesday morning, the North Sequoia Private Airstrip, Sequoia, Oklahoma. The Quinn sisters unlatched their seatbelts and smiled as the pilot stepped out from the cockpit. He smiled at the two young ladies. Well, ladies, I hope you enjoyed your flight. Raylan nodded. Oh, yes, sir. I mean, wow, this is the way to travel. He chuckled, as did the other 4 men on the flight, whom they'd learned are all Ameritech agents who were headed home to see their families. Well, I won't be catching you on the return, the pilot went on, so let me wish you and yours a Merry Christmas. Thank you, Kaylee said brightly, and you too. There are 2 agents waiting for you on the tarmac. We were in the air 2 hours and 23 minutes. You lost 2 hours coming east, so the current time is 10:27, and the temperature is 41 degrees. No precipitation. You should be at your destination in about an hour. Thank you, Raylan said. The one flight attendant opened the door, and the girls rose to start pulling their luggage from the compartment behind the lavatory, but the agents all rose. We'll take care of that for you. Oh, wow, Raylan said softly. You guys are treating us like we're something special. That's because you are, one of the agents said, making Kaylee giggle. They followed the men down the stairs and were immediately greeted by 2 more agents. Hello, Miss Quinn and Miss Quinn, one said. I'm Agent Allen, and this is Agent Walker. Both agents stepped forward and shook hands with the girls. Raylan studied Agent Walker. Before she had a chance to ask, he smiled and nodded. Yes, Cherokee. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to stare. I was just being nosy. I'm not insulted, and I don't get offended. Okay, so I imagine you'd like to get on the road, Agent Allen said. Walker and I have already unloaded your boxes of gifts from the plane. That and your other luggage is all in the second car. He opened the back door of the vehicle, and they loaded up. On the road, Raylan watched the familiar scenery as it passed, thinking of her teen years. Kaylee had fallen asleep but woke when they left I-44. Silently, they watched as they passed several churches, the old barbecue place, the post office, and finally turned onto 4th Street. Kaylee took out her purse and tried to touch up the bruises on her face, not that the makeup really covered much. They both took out brushes and began to brush their hair. The car came to a halt on the street outside of their parents' home. It was a tiny gray house with white trim, a little wooden porch out front, and over on the side, off the side street, was the driveway and the wheelchair ramp. No one ever used the front door. They got out of the cars and looked at the house. Everyone okay? Agent Walker asked. The girls both nodded. So, Agent Allen began, we're going to wait until after you surprise them, and then we'll help you with your luggage and packages, and then we're going to leave one of the cars with you. Oh, why? Raylan asked. Well, you don't want to be stranded, do you? You're going to need some transportation. You might want to go shopping or something. Well, thank you. Everyone is being so thoughtful and kind. Agent Walker smiled. Well, we're just doing our job. The Kinos are the ones being thoughtful and kind. So, would you like me to get the homecoming surprise on video for you? Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Yes, JoJo said he'd like to see the video. Well, hand me your phone. She unlocked her phone and handed it to him. He nodded with a smile. Action. Raylan took Kaylee's hand and started toward the side door. They moved up the ramp and knocked on the door. It took a full minute, but finally their mother slowly opened the door. "Surprise!" Raylan and Kaylee said brightly. "Oh, oh my goodness, oh," their mother said, her hands flying to her cheeks. She reached out and hugged the girls. "Oh, Kaylee, oh, Raylan, oh my goodness, what are you doing here?" "Well, we wanted to come home and surprise you for Christmas," Ray said. "It was Kaylee's idea, so here we are." "Oh my goodness, come in, come in. Your father is going to be so happy." She stopped and looked at the two men in black suits, one holding up a phone to video. "Mom, this is Agent Walker and Agent Allen. They are with Ameritech Security, and they were taking care of us on our trip." "Oh, well, now that's interesting. It's nice to meet you. You come in, too." All five people turned and headed into the home. The agents looked around. It was indeed small. The five people filled up the small kitchen that they'd walked into. They followed Mrs. Quinn down a wide hall to a living room on the left. A man sat in a wheelchair and looked up at them when they entered. He smiled widely. "Hi, Dad," Raylan said warmly. "Hello, my ray of sunshine," he said as she hugged him. "What a wonderful surprise." Ray backed away to allow Kaylee to approach. "Hey, Dad," Kaylee said softly. "Hello, KK. Oh, my goodness, my baby. What happened? Who has hurt you?" She smiled. "How do you know it was someone? Maybe I was in a car accident." He rolled his eyes at her. "Well, I may be old, but I'm not dumb. We'll talk about it later. Okay, it's so good to see you." She leaned down and hugged him hard, and as she laid her head against his shoulder, she was overcome with emotion and tried to sniff back the tears, and he patted her back. There, now, KK. "It's gonna be OKK," he said with a smile as he sang his little rhyme that he used to sing to her whenever she got hurt as a little girl. That brought on a fresh wave of tears, and he patted her back and shushed her. Finally, she backed away. Mr. Quinn's eyes immediately went to the two men standing in the room. "Dad, this is Agent Walker and Agent Allen. Agent's my father, Alo Quinn." Both agents stepped forward and shook his hand. "It's very nice to meet you, sir," they both said. "Agents?" Alo Quinn asked. "Maybe you should fill me in," he said. Raylan nodded. "Oh, we met some wonderful people, the Adams family and the Kino family. They are so kind. And when Katie said that she wished she could come home to surprise you for Christmas, they made it happen. The agents work for a place called Ameritech Security, and the Kinos are good friends with the guy who owns Ameritech Security, so they arranged for them to escort us home." He smiled. "Well, that is wonderful." He looked up at the agents. "I can't thank you enough." "Oh, it's our pleasure, sir." "How long will you be here, my sweeties?" Alo asked. "I have to be back at work on Friday," Raylan explained, "so we're leaving on Thursday, late afternoon." He nodded. "Well, we'll take it, won't we, Danny?" he said to his wife. "Oh, absolutely. Even one day would be wonderful. I am so happy." Katie smiled. "You must be hungry after your long trip," Danny Quinn said. Kaylee laughed. "I'm starved." Danny looked up at the agents. "Will you stay?" "Oh, no, ma'am. We have things we have to take care of. We'll just unload their luggage and be on our way," Agent Walker said. Raylan walked out with the agents to unload the luggage. It took only a few trips. The agents bid farewell to the Quinns, and Ray walked them out. Agent Allen handed her the keys to a car, and she nodded and smiled. I promised to not go on any joyrides." Agent Allen grinned. "Go for it. You can do whatever you want. And listen, you have our numbers. If you need us for anything, I mean anything at all, call us." She frowned. "Well, I wouldn't want to call you away from your families at Christmas." "We don't have families. That's why we're working. Our goal right now is to serve you and anyone else who needs us. So if you need anything, call." She sighed and nodded. "Thank you both so much." "It's been our pleasure, Miss Raylan Quinn. And tell Kaylee we'll see her on Thursday." "I will. Merry Christmas, Miss Quinn." "Merry Christmas to you both," she said softly. She stood there and watched them until they drove out of sight, then turned and headed into the house. She headed in and stood in the doorway before she entered the kitchen. Her mother, as usual, was working hard preparing lunch. Ray looked her over. She was slim. Her long hair, once black, was mostly gray now. She had big brown eyes, a small nose, tan-colored skin. Her lips were full, and her smile was so kind. Her skin was surprisingly smooth for a 75-year-old woman. Today, she wore tan slacks and a white sweater and dark brown slip-on shoes. Her hair was back in a clip at the nape of her neck. She wore small gold earrings and, of course, her gold cross necklace. Ray smiled. Her parents were very much into Jesus. "May I help you, Mommy?" she asked. Her mother turned with a smile. "I love when you call me that." "I know. That's why I said it." Her mother giggled, a sound Ray Lynn loved. "No, my sweet Ray. I won't be long. I'm just warming up some stew I made last night and some fry bread. Go visit with your father." Ray nodded and moved forward and hugged her mother from behind. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, Sunshine." Ray headed to the living room. She stood in that doorway too, taking in the scene. The tiny living room consisted of a love seat, a chair, and an end table. On the table was one lamp. Across from the seating area was the front door that nobody ever used, and a front window. On the left side of the door was a bookshelf and a space heater. There was no TV. There was an old dial radio on the third shelf up at the bookcase. Currently, music was softly coming from that. A Bible lay on the end table and a glass of water. Her father was in a wheelchair as usual. One of the reasons for very little furniture was to have room to manipulate the wheelchair. Further down the hall, past the living room, was a bathroom and two very small bedrooms. The floors were old, scratched hardwood. The walls were dingy and in need of painting. Cali was speaking to her father, and Ray stayed at the door, not wanting to interrupt. "And Dad, this whole family, they all speak to him, so I don't even know what to call it. I mean, with such respect and honor, maybe. They treat him like we would a chief, like Chief Saracen. And Mom says that's the way everyone treated you back in the day, back before you lost your legs. And I was thinking, back before you lost the use of your legs. And I was thinking Grandmaster Kino reminds me so much of you. In almost every way. He has a power about him. And so do you, Dad." I had a long talk with him because he counseled me about how I felt unworthy and how I treat Ray pretty bad. And he said I was a bright daughter of God and I needed to get my act together and live so that I don't feel unworthy anymore. He said when I went out to help some homeless people, it made me feel better because being in service to others makes us forget about our own troubles. Dad, he sounded just like you, and I realized that I don't treat you with the respect I should. I was kinder and more polite to a man I hardly know. I remember I said some pretty ugly things to you before I left, and I wanted to come home and apologize to you, Dad, because I love you, and you deserve nothing but respect and honor." Alo smiled kindly and nodded. "I appreciate the strength it took for you to come home and tell me this, and I forgive you. Sometimes growing up means we make mistakes. But the real growing up, the reaching of maturity, that is when the strength comes in and the growth takes place." She sniffed. "See? That sounds just like Grandmaster Kino. You even kind of look alike." "Oh, well, now he sounds like an interesting man," Alo said with a twinkle in his eye. "I'd like to meet him." "Oh, I think that would be wonderful." "Well, it might be a little hard for this old 83-year-old man to travel, but let's see if we can make it happen. I would love for you to come out and see where I go to school and where Ray works and see where Ray and I just moved." "Oh, you just moved?" "Oh, yes, sir, and that has to do with this," she said, pointing to her face. "And I want to tell you and Mom how this happened, and it's going to be hard because it happened because I was not obeying God's laws." "I see," he sighed. "Well, there are always consequences." Kaylee nodded. "I know that now." "You tried to tell us." "Daddy, I am sorry. I'm so sorry for how I treated you and for all the things I've done that I knew you wouldn't approve of and for how I've treated Ray too. And Grandmaster Kino asked me why I mistreated the one person who seems to have dedicated her life to me, and that really woke me up." Ray decided it was a good time to interrupt, and she walked into the room. "You don't mistreat me." Kay sighed. "No, he was right, Ray. I do. I take advantage of you, and I haven't been grateful for everything you do for me. and it's time for me to get my act together. Alo nodded his head. Well, this Grandmaster Kino has called you to repentance, Cali, and you have heard that call, and for that I'm extremely grateful. Lunch is ready. Ray went to the back of her father's wheelchair and turned him around, and they headed to the small table in the kitchen. They each sat in their usual places. Cali between the table and the wall, Danny to her husband's left, and Ray to the right. I'll say grace today, Alo offered. They bowed their heads in prayer. He gave thanks for the food and for the girls coming home and for Cali's new perspective on life. The meal was simple, beef stew and fry bread and water. Mom, Ray began, do you have any big plans for dinner tonight or Christmas dinner tomorrow? She shook her head. No, but if I'd known you were coming home, I would have bought some more food. That's okay, Mom. Ray and I will go to the store after lunch and get whatever you need. We'll do it up big. We'll have a giant party. Her mother laughed. Oh, fun. A giant party. Who shall we invite? That's a hard one, Ray said as she thought. I mean, who would come over on such late notice on Christmas Eve? Alo smiled. Matthew 22, 9 through 10. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find. So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. Katie grinned. But who's going to pay for all this food? Danny asked. The Kinos are paying, Raylan said. He insisted. He gave me a card and will pretty much authorize any amount. So these people, I'm guessing they're pretty well off, Danny asked. Mom, have you ever heard of the Kinos? She frowned and shook her head. Our Grandmaster Kino owns Kino Martial Arts. He has like $50 billion. Oh, yes, Alo said. I've heard of Kino Martial Arts. I thought he was an actor, though. Oh, that's his son, Ricky Kino. I see. And how did you end up meeting these people? Well, that was because of me, Katie said. She sighed. I guess I'd better tell you what happened. New scene. It is December 24th, Tuesday morning, Stewart Ranch, Pine Forest, Georgia. Daisy and Hannah laughed at Georgia. She was clean and dry, and they'd just finished brushing her and clipped a pretty red bow on her collar. She wasn't having it. She kept pawing at it and trying to shake it off. Y'all need to take that off the poor dog, Charlie said sternly. She obviously doesn't like it. Lena nodded. Yeah, I don't think she likes the way it feels. It's too big. Daisy sighed. I think you're right. Hannah reached over and unclipped the bow. You don't care about looking pretty, do you, girl? As soon as the bow was gone, she went to drink some water and eat. The fat, 4-week-old puppies were currently each licking their own plates of a gruel made of puppy kibble and raw milk. Though most of them were interested in the new food, a few of them wandered back looking for Mom. Hannah picked up one of those and kissed its nose. Hey, little guy, you don't want to eat, huh? That's okay. You'll learn. She set it down near Georgia, and he immediately started to try to nurse. Lena smiled at Hannah. She, too, was learning. She didn't look so tiny or skinny anymore. She looked healthy. Her face was glowing. She seemed completely normal, and Lena wondered if that was a front. She wondered if maybe she cried at night or had nightmares. Lena herself did. Well, Lena began, I'm going to head back over to the stables and take care of a few things. Guess I'll see you all over at the inn tonight. See you, Bugs, Daisy said. Bye, Hannah said softly. Bye, Bugs, Charlie said as he tickled one of the puppies. Lena walked quickly to the stables. She took a moment to speak to Santana especially. Hey, big boy, she whispered. Are you missing your man like I'm missing your man? He whinnied and nodded, making her smile. He lowered his head and pressed it against her forehead, and they stood there together. Lena sighed and looked around the stable. So, do you remember last Christmas when Jake was deployed in Germany? Remember I told you all about baby Jesus and how he was born in a stable, but it was probably a little smaller than this one? She sighed. If baby Jesus was here, would you recognize who he is? I mean, that he's the Son of God? I bet you would. You'd probably stand close to him and protect him. I just bet you would. And I bet you miss Jake just like I do. Do you? Does your heart yearn to see him? 'Cause mine does. She stopped while she wiped a tear from her eye, and she sighed and got herself under control. But hey, He's going to call us tomorrow. I'm so excited about that. Santana nodded his head a few times and snorted, and she laughed. Me too. Her phone buzzed, and she pulled it from her back pocket. Her eyes grew wide. It's him. She hit the green button. Jake? Hey, Bugs. Hey, you're early. I thought you were going to call on Christmas Day. He smiled. I was, but something has come up. Oh, well, hold on. Let me get up to the house so I can see your handsome face better. No, Bugs, there's no time. Oh, well, what's going on? You know I can't tell you that. I'm in a hurry. We're shipping out. Shipping out? Like out of Afghanistan? I can't tell you, babe, but I won't be around to call you tomorrow, so they allowed us a few minutes to let you know. Jake, she said, unable to control the emotion in her voice. Jake, when will I hear from you again? I'm not sure. It could be a while. I love you, Lena. I love you too, and I miss you. Please be careful. Please come home. Lena, tell my parents I love them, and, well, tell my dad to remember the story of Saray. What's Saray? He'll tell you the story. Bugs, be strong. Be strong for me. I will. I will, Jake, but can't you tell me anything else? I can tell you that I love you more than life itself. I can tell you that God has a plan, and trust him. Let's pray together. She sniffed. Okay. She bowed her head and listened to her husband's strong voice talk to God and plead with him to send his angels to protect them both and bring them back together again and to protect the people he's trying to save and help the mission to be successful. He ended in Jesus' name. Jake opened his eyes and smiled. It's going to be okay, Bugs. I'll see you soon. Promise? He nodded. I promise. When I prayed just now, I felt peace. Didn't you? She shook her head. No. Well, don't let fear blind you or keep you from hearing God's voice. Stay strong. I have to go. Merry Christmas, babe. Merry Christmas, she blubbered. I love you. I love you. Go talk to my father. I will. Bye, Jacob Apple. Bye, Milena Apple. The screen went blank. She could see the reflection of her own face in the black screen, and she wiped at the tear coursing down her cheek and shoved the phone in her pocket and headed to the end. And that is the end of chapter 29.